Hello everybody, and welcome to Reading VQL. So VQL stands for Veezoo Query Language, and it's this that gets generated every time you ask a question, every time Veezoo decides to create a chart, and we use this because it's far more akin to natural language, and it's leveraging something that LLMs do really well. So to break it down, we have vars, which are the name steps, like a variable or a common table expression maybe. We have relationships, where we can span the knowledge graph when we're connecting different classes together. We have the entities that sit within those classes, so we can filter and call out specific entities. These are like members within a dimension. And then finally, we have measures, and we have group by clauses so that we can slice and dice our dimensions. So let's take a look at how this works in a real situation. I'm going to use a measure that we used in an earlier session. So this was confidence scale price premium. So this is just a metric that I'm going to get across the whole data set. Let's take a look at the VQL here. So first of all, we can see that var, which is dynamic pricing, and this comes from the KB dynamic pricing area of the knowledge graph. Secondly, we've got our measure, and as we can see, this is just called out, comes from this class, and this is where it lives. And then finally, we've got this select statement, which is just calling out the measure. So within the knowledge graph, we have KB dynamic pricing, and then within dynamic pricing, we have our measure down here, and it's those two components that we're using. Okay, let's jump back here and follow up with our by depot. So this time we've broken that same measure down by depot. And if we look at the query, we can now see we've got this dynamic pricing as a var again. This time we've got this optional, which we can think of as being a left join. So if the data's there, it will join it. Otherwise, it's not going to filter it out. So it's going to keep it in there. But interestingly here, we can see this with depot sat in there as well. And then on the next line, we've got our measure again. But again, this time we're slicing by depot. So this is pulled in from here. And then finally, in our select statement, we've got the depot and we've got our measure. So taking a look at this in the studio, we can see we've got dynamic pricing. If I scroll to the bottom, we can see we have our with depot. So that's the connection into depot there. Right, let's go ahead and ask one more question. This time, again, let's do a follow-up. And we'll say for Wales. And this time, if we look at the VQL, we can see, again, it starts with dynamic pricing. We've got a relationship with depot. This time, we've got this Wales 3088. So depot.region is equal to that. So filtered out some of the rows from our depot, and then we're calling out our measure, slicing it by depot again. And exactly the same select statement, depot and our measure. Let's check out the entity. So this time, I'm going to jump into the depot class. And if I scroll down, we can see we've got the class region here. And if I open this entity, I've got Wales 3088, which is what made up that part of my VQL query. So these are those sections gone through: vars, relationships, entities, measures, and group by. And why do we use VQL? So it's short, it's readable, but it still has the SQL underneath it. It's calculated deterministically. It's something that an LLM can easily create and understand, versus the complexity of SQL, which it can easily get wrong. We can take a look at it in more detail using the query editor. Let's just jump back into the platform where we can see our query that we used. And if we take a look at the SQL, we can see that just a few lines of VQL there has created a substantial amount of SQL. And the more logic, the more complexity it is, the bigger the SQL gets. However, the VQL stays pretty compact. If we take our final query as an example, So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go into Studio, into this query editor. I'm going to go to VQL and I'm just going to paste it in. And so there we can see that same result as the output. And here we've got the VQL rewrite rules. Again, don't need to know any of this. Veezoo does it all automatically, but it's just useful to understand the process. So we can see that Veezoo is expanding out its own VQL. And through each of these steps, it gets longer, all done deterministically, until we end up at the fully rewritten VQL. And so just a few lines initially has ended up with this, and then this can be converted into SQL. And as we can see, that SQL query, it's much longer, even for someone fluent. It's going to take a little while to read through and understand, versus our initial VQL query here. Thank you for watching this session on Reading VQL. I hope it's been useful, and see you on the next one.